Hi, everybody. This is Slava Kurilak at Produvia, and I am super excited for you to join me on this live stream where we talk about how to rebuild banking infrastructure using the latest technologies. This live stream is meant to educate. This live stream is meant to inspire everyone who's interested in solving fintech, real banking problems. This live stream is meant to interview experts around the world, leaders, executives, founders who are interested to solve industry problems. And for today's live stream, I am excited to talk about our upcoming speaker, Wade, who is the founder, CEO at MOOV. I will briefly introduce Wade, and you will have a chance to ask Wade questions during this live stream. I am super excited to interview Wade. I will bring on Wade in just a second, and in the meanwhile, I will remind everyone who is joining, this is a live stream. This live stream is meant to be interactive. If you have questions for Wade or myself, feel free to ask, and Wade and I will be happy to respond. So let me introduce Wade, and we will get started. You will now see a side-by-side picture of myself and Wade on your screen. Wade, thanks very much for joining.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Great. For those who are not familiar with Wade, has founded MOOV back in 2017, I believe, and he has created a truly unique approach in solving a lot of the frustrations individuals face in the fintech industry. And Wade has decided to solve these frustrations by creating a company called MOOV. MOOV has recently raised $27 million to solve some of these challenges. And Wade is the founder CEO at MOOV, and he will go into the details of what they're working on. But I am super excited to introduce Wade and have a chance to talk to him.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here, and thanks for having me here. Sorry, and excited for any questions that are out there. But happy to jump into any aspect of why we're building it or how we're building it that's of interest to people.
Absolutely. So a little bit of introduction to Wade is that he has sort of been in the fintech space, but sometimes we forget our initial motivation. So Wade, if you could, think back to 2017, think back to when you were first starting out, sort of what were the things you were noticing back in 2017 that had led you to sort of go down this path?
Yeah, absolutely. So we saw three macro changes in financial services. So the first big change was this decoupling of the user experience with from the, connected to the financial institution, right? So that kind of started, if you think back in 2010, everyone thought Starbucks was going to become a bank. And it turns out they just wanted to embed banking services inside of the Starbucks app for a better user experience. And we watched that compound over the last decade with applications like Airbnb, Uber, Lyft, and all these marketplaces that the financial institution wasn't at the forefront of the user experience anymore, but you still needed to have financial services in order to complete the transaction. So that was like one major tidal wave heading our way. The second one was just that, a cloud native world. Like how do we have a feature at huge scale at a cost point that allows people to make margin on it. And if you really think about financial services, a lot of that, probably 80% of the infrastructure of financial services is still running on Z series mainframes from IBM and AS400s. And so just the operating costs of those systems versus cloud companies was keeping innovation down for the masses. And then really that third piece is that developers over the last 10 years, as they've been trying to build on top of the kind of traditional legacy providers, started realizing, hey, their problems become, my user interface problem. So if something goes wrong with Bank Corp, for simple, it's not a bank corp problem. It's a simple problem, and your card doesn't work. And those three forces are really what allowed us to decide to build MOOV. We've done it in a super unique way in that we've open sourced over 90% of our code base on GitHub. And so not only do we think we're going at a unique problem in the marketplace, we think we're going at it as in a unique way of being open source first. That's usually where developers go first, and those are really the customers that we're selling to.
Wait, this is a fascinating approach that I see more and more companies take today. Realizing that you are sort of at your best in the data you accumulate, and the software you use to run your services should be in the public sphere, should be under scrutiny for bugs, issues, and things that could break, especially financial services. So I'm curious to ask you the question of, what were the motivation to go a developer first? What were the motivations to go open source first? It's not a common approach, but I do see companies starting to take this path.
Yeah, so I'm a developer at heart, so computer science undergraduate degree, and somehow have been in the banking sector. But for me, I look to things like companies like Confluent that support the Kafka event streaming service. We look to companies like Elastic that allow us to do autocomplete on our search, MongoDB as document storage, other projects, whether that's TensorFlow or Kubernetes from Google. All of these tools have one thing in common, and that's that they're critical infrastructure, but they aren't a critical differentiator to anybody. And we think the same way about a DDA account, about an ACH payment, about doing a real-time payment, is that we want the stability that the open source community brings and that level of developer access. And then some set of those customers want service level agreements. They want somebody to call when things go wrong, and other people don't. And we're fine creating more value in the community than what we capture monetarily. And I think there's a lot of good comps in tech companies that have done this, and we're trying to do that in a highly regulated space. So maybe we're the first to market in trying to do open source in highly regulated environment. But as somebody who's built 3 companies inside of financial services, I know what the auditors want, and so we put those controls in place from day one.
Wade, I would love to ask you the question of impact. Right? You are developing MOOV, and MOOV now has lots of momentum, and you now have a very strong push to change how people view open banking infrastructure, and you're doing so through the open source code you share. So I'm curious, what impact do you see the company making 1 year from now, 5, 10 years from now?
Yeah, and over the next year, I think we're going after, we've really focused on a couple payment modalities all the way from the consumer to the Federal Reserve in the United States. So, from the US, so it's US specific, right? We're myopically US at this point. But because of the open source nature, we already have people working on things like Swift, UPI from India. So other payment networks are bringing in code and donating it to the MOOV community, which is like the most humbling thing ever. And what we really want to be is that de facto standard for developers to go to, and they know it's proven, hardened infrastructure that they can build on top of. And my happy day is going to be 5 years from now, where people don't worry about some of these underpinning infrastructure pieces. In the same way, we don't think about cloud providers anymore, right? You're not like, well, I need to go buy my Dell computer and install Windows or Linux on it. You just use a cloud provider, and it's going to work for you. If we can do that at the infrastructure level, so companies don't have to spend tons of money and time and energy, and instead put that energy into their go-to-market strategy and how they differentiate, that's success for us.
Absolutely. I see that by creating open source solutions, you are saving your customers a lot of time in getting started. So would you say, Wade, this is one of the biggest reasons why a company, your client, would choose MOOV?
We think that it's twofold, right? We've got myself that has background at Bilgo, Jack Henry, Banno, people like Walt Cox that come from Rapid, Redwood Credit Union, FIS, Orlando Santos, who's MasterCard Bill Pay Exchange and Payrail. So deep payments experience across our team. We've built all kinds of companies in this space, and really, our promise to ourselves is we wished MOOV existed in our last companies. We would have used it. And if we can kind of be our worst critic of our own technology and say, well, would we have used it? Then other developers, I think, can trust what we're up to.
Absolutely. I think that this idea of eating your own food is a very, very powerful concept for a lot of companies, especially as they become their own users, right? So from that perspective, right, if you're developing something for yourself, if you see yourself using that technology, if you are sort of your best current clients, then you're truly building something fundamental. At the same time, if you are going and focusing on the protocol level, if you are focusing on the infrastructure level, you're also taking on more responsibility. You're also creating a more difficult role plan for yourself, because you're now dealing with sort of the more granular aspects of sort of the user experience. So I'm curious, has this granularity impacted MOOV? Obviously, raising capital will help you to make sure that you're developing this open source infrastructure. But at the same time, developing protocol is not easy. It takes time. There are many things you must consider. And I'm curious how sort of you're going about taking care of this granularity.
So it's something that we actually bring up in hiring. It's always easy to blame somebody else, right? Like, well, my startup didn't work because XYZ vendor. We are the XYZ vendor. And so you, to your point, are taking on a huge burden, a huge level of responsibility to do that low level protocol very, very well. For us, I don't know if we're sadistic or what our problem is, but you have some of these things like credit reporting in the United States. It's an 80-year-old flat file protocol. ACH is 40 years old, but there's $55 trillion that go through that flat file protocol. And bad things happen if you have an off by one error. The whole file doesn't go through, which means maybe 10,000 people's payroll file doesn't go through. So, people get agitated. There's no fail fast and reboot when payroll doesn't go through on Friday. And so I think we're trying to balance that level of scrutiny, that whether that's a database or messaging queue or programming language or operating system, these are all critical pieces of infrastructure as well, and really mimicking what they've done in the open source community to have more eyes, more use cases, more test cases than anybody. And that's what's allowed us to be successful so far.
Wade, I'm curious to understand how you would go about pitching the concept of developing a protocol, something that is not immediately tangible to an investor, right? Investors want to see return on investment quicker. And if you're developing a protocol, you are, in effect, making a statement that says, we will develop something, we may not see returns right away. So it's a harder business case to make to develop something, especially in the open source. So I'm curious to know how you would go about, sort of from your perspective, pitching the idea of protocol development or infrastructure development for your investors.
So I think we have two of the best investors in financial services and frankly in technology, between Bain Capital Ventures with Matt Harris and Angela Strange at Andreessen Horowitz. Both of them have been investing in this space for more than a decade. Both of them are also very familiar with other open source companies. So if you comp us against Elastic, MuleSoft, Redis, Cloudera, Confluent, these are all companies that had 4 years before they hit that stop hockey stick of user adoption. Personally, me and my partner invested $850,000 into Payroll just to work on open source protocols from 2017 until our seed round. And so that's a commitment to go the distance. Part of the reason we've raised $33 million is to allow our partners to know we're going to be around in the future. But our investors have seen this play out. They haven't seen it play out in financial services, but they have seen it play out in technology companies. And I think if we can use their experience and take that longer runway approach of doing it well, doing it right, and doing it transparently, we'll be successful.
Wade, one of the most, I would say, challenging aspects of creating both open source and proprietary software is figuring out, right? So figuring out how do you properly license your services so that other clients, other users can use it and not be hindered or limited by what you're offering, or vice versa, take advantage of what you're offering. So licensing is a key component of any company that is doing both open source and proprietary software. From your perspective, how are you handling licensing?
Yeah, absolutely. So we wholeheartedly believe these low-level protocols need to be Apache 2 open source. And the community, including us, we're members of the community in our paid services, right? So we kind of look at ourselves as users of those technologies, benefit from that Apache 2 source code. We've chosen the path of whenever you open source something, you can never take it back. And so we've committed to those protocols being open source in Apache 2. There's really a layer above that, which is the primitives, which is I have ISO 20022, but how do I get that ISO 20022 message to the clearinghouse on their RTP network and respond back? And so we've built those primitives out internally. We're still looking at ways of open sourcing those technologies, and we just haven't done that yet. And so we think that that's advantageous when it works, and then the community can build on top of it. We're not so sure it's advantageous to start those projects open source. And then on top of that, what we've chosen to keep closed source is really our dashboards, BCP, AML, BSA, disaster recovery, snapshotting, all of the things that you need to do in order to get your SOC 2 to be FFIEC compliant. Those pieces are highly opinionated, how we choose to do rollbacks and snapshots and the pieces that come along with that. And we think that's what people are willing to pay for in some use cases is you guys handle that service level agreement and SOC 2 and FFIEC compliance, and we'll build on top of it. And then other people, they're happy to just bring that in-house themselves.
Wait, let's talk about risk management for your clients when you're offering your services. This is a very common scenario that we face at Produvia, is that we have clients who come to us and they're often seeking to develop custom software solutions. Oftentimes those solutions are using AI technologies. And what we often discuss is risk and risk management. We ask our clients, are you comfortable with risk? Are you comfortable with taking on more risk or less risk? And this often relates to if the client is interested to take on more risk, perhaps we're guiding the client to, for example, implement a strategy, implement a few elements that will improve their current circumstances. If the client is comfortable to take on less risk, now we're developing the full solution. We're taking care of the training, we're taking care of the development, the deployment, etc. So from your perspective, you are creating solutions for your clients. These solutions are reducing, in a way, the risk that your clients are taking on by using your solutions. And this is one of the ways that your customers are able to save time. So I'm curious as to how do you see risk for MOOV?
Yeah, so for us, first and foremost, we think it's better to do a tri-party agreement with the bank and the technology company that wants to use our software. And so the bank ends up being the program manager, taking care of the sponsorship. They're utilizing our technology to collect the data for KYC, KYB, OFAC sanction search, kind of identity management. All of those data elements come through our system. But ultimately, it's up to the sponsor bank to decide, hey, do I want to service this industry? What are my daily transfer limits? What, for us, the difference between 10,000 and 10 million is a couple zeros. It's a lot different from a risk standpoint at the financial institution. So that's why we do more of a tri-party agreement, is allowing them to do the underwriting, have the relationship with the commercial entity, and we act as a service provider. We think that's a lot different. There's obviously other payment processors that do full stack of compliance and bank and the whole 9 yards. And we think there's a market for that as well. Obviously, there's a lot of companies that have been successful. We just think this other approach for companies works well for them.
Wait, let's talk about some of the advantages of creating your work in the open source. One of these advantages that comes to my mind is that you're now able to collect more data that you would not otherwise. You're able to leverage that data and make sense of it in a more comprehensive fashion. So I'm curious to what you think are the true benefits of leveraging open source to build out your infrastructure.
The biggest advantage of working in the open is I think every programmer takes more pride. So every software company worries about technical debt and shortcuts, and we're going to hot fix this thing to get around a corner. When thousands of people are reviewing your code, I think there's more pride of ownership. So to me, all of your engineers actually do better work when it's in the open. And I think that it probably would, every company would serve themselves well in open sourcing the non-strategic code paths that they have. The second piece of being in the open source domain is just having more use cases. So my use case for my libraries is payments. But we've had top 5 banks, top 5 publicly traded fintech companies utilize our libraries to take years and trillions of transactions of flat files, whether that was ACH or ISO 8583, and use it to train their machine learning models, right? It's really hard to load a flat file into TensorFlow or PyTorch. But if you use our libraries, you can go through 3 years of history of your ACH files, load that into JSON, so you have name value pairs, and then load that into ML models. And so by doing that, all of a sudden you have a community of developers that are using a totally different use case than what we wanted to create the libraries for our own use. And it really hardens those libraries. So we know for a fact a top 4 bank ran 4.2 trillion ACH files through our library to train their ML models. Those were successful payments. And so when they encountered some validation errors, when they encountered some parsing errors by running years of transactions through our libraries, we were able to fix those. And so you take our company that has some of these libraries are less than a year old, or the oldest one's 18 months old. And you say, well, number 2 bank or number 3 bank in America ran all their transactions through it. That's a much more hardened library than if we kept it proprietary, would have ever been able to deal with. And those would have been production failures. And so I think having it out there as an open community, we have a bug hunt, so people are constantly looking at it for security issues. All of those vectors, of use cases, all those vectors of eyeballs really makes it the most stable libraries I think in existence. And we're 2 years in. That's the power of open source.
Wade, this is a fascinating topic of how you go about leveraging technology. In your case, you're leveraging the open source technology. The other elements that I often discuss with my clients is the concept of business strategy. So I'm curious to know, how do you see yourself growing? How do you see yourself improving? And sort of what is your business strategy?
So our business strategy it's a platform. And that's a double-edged sword, right? What do I get to do on a platform? If I have RTP, ACH payout, 1099 reporting, I can pay independent contractors, I can pay vendors, I can do all these type of items that some people would say, oh, well, you're treasury management. And we go, well, you could build treasury management on top of MOOV, or you're a bill pay system. Like, no, you could build a bill pay system on top of MOOV. You're a peer-to-peer platform. No, but you could build a peer-to-peer platform on top of MOOV. And so the good and bad of having this low-level platform is that the actual product to take to market is things that are being built by development shops that are solving specific issues, and they just need this low-level tool to work well. And so for us to expand, what we've chosen to do is, when in doubt, copy the best, right? So we've copied kind of the IBM playbook idea, where here's the platform, and here's a playbook of what you can do with this technology to really simplify those use cases for different vertical markets that we can serve.
Wade, let's talk about data. Data is the new oil, if it were. It is the reason why some companies get ahead of others, is that they're able to accumulate private data. That data gives them a competitive advantage, and they're able to leverage this data in a way that gives their customers lots of value. So let's talk about the data that you're able to create as the result of pursuing MOOV.
Absolutely. So I think, having ML embedded into your software stack in 2020 is the same thing as in 2010 having a mobile strategy, right? I mean, or having an API strategy in 2005. If these are just natural iterations of how companies should work, and if you don't have a machine learning strategy in 2020, this isn't a big scary beast anymore. There's lots of tools that you can leverage. How we think about it is there are so many workflows on the back end that are manual processes at financial institutions. And so as all these transactions are coming through, we're utilizing ML in order to train models for these are the type of transactions to review. These are first-time customers. And then if a client chooses to, they can actually share that data across an aggregate. And that way, if we've already KYC'd and OFAC'd and sanction searched somebody we're paying, they've already linked their bank account, we don't have to do that again. And that's just frankly a better consumer experience if they've already been onboarded into our platform to allow them to do that in other places. And now we get this aggregate effect where we can see transactions that happened across different software systems to the same end users, that allows us to be more powerful. We think that grows over time, the types of solutions that we can bring to the market. Obviously, this is a chicken and egg problem. When you have a dozen customers, you don't have that network effect. But as we grow, we've wanted to embed that from day one so that our customers have better experiences if they choose to use MOOV.
Wade, this is a very fascinating topic for myself in that, I think about how you create custom data sets. I think about how you create the necessary pieces for more advanced technologies that leverage statistics, that leverage predictive models. And creating the data is often step one for myself and my team. And so from my perspective, you are creating a very unique data set, a data set that you are growing over time thanks to your clients that are able to give you and access certain levels of permissions through your platform. Because of this sort of a network effect of using different protocols, creating different services for different clients, I see you will accumulate lots of different data lakes, lots of different data sets over time. And I'm also curious to know, where do you think are like the most promising areas for fintech data, right? Perhaps opportunities that you will see in the future, perhaps data sets that you're now able to accumulate over time. I'll give you one brief example. A lot of the clients that come to us, they are interested to use imagery and video data. Imagery and video data are sort of the next best way to go about using computer system models. And so are you able to make some sort of predictions of what data will be very useful for you? Are you looking at perhaps figuring out that there's some sort of anomalies going on with data? Are you looking at numerical data primarily? Like, what do you see are the trends of data going over time?
Yeah, so I'll kind of not speak on behalf of MOOV for this answer, right?
Yep.
We, my undergraduate degree is computer science and expert systems, and so sadly, we did, grew up doing statistical analysis, and now you can have a sample set of everybody. Makes a lot of the math a lot easier than what we did in school. But for me, right now you have all these disparate systems. So from the bank to the bank's commercial customer to the commercial customer's end user and the commercial customer's end user devices, you have these silos of data through that entire process. So when you go to send a payment, sending payments easy. Sending payments for the wrong person is the hard part. And reconciliation and exception processing are really the more difficult aspects of payments. And so what I'm seeing is people want to move money between the two of us. And kind of big idea, maybe MOOV does this in 5 years, maybe somebody does it before us. But if I want to send you $10, the current state of the world is I have to ask you, are you on Zelle, or do you have a US bank account that I can ACH you money? Do you have an IBAN so I can SWIFT you funds? Do you have Cash App or Venmo, or, list goes on and on and on and on and on. And each one of those platforms have already KYC'd you. They know who you are. They have access to your bank account. And sadly, this is the state of social commerce between us, is trying to figure out what payment rail you're authenticated on and I'm authenticated on in order to send funds from one person to the next. And so where I hope this goes is we stop talking about payment rails and we start talking about identities of individuals and the devices that they've authenticated and how we're able to send funds between each other. And if we do that, consumers are better off and commerce is better off, rather than trying to be down in this kind of sausage making party that we're currently in 2020.
Wade, one of the most promising technologies that a lot of companies are now starting to think about, and I'm curious to know where you are as well on this road plan, is leveraging blockchain technologies to create a different level of transparency between transactions and records. Blockchain was invented in the sort of and applied primarily in the fintech space. Blockchain technologies have truly changed how a lot of people thought about record keeping, how a lot of people thought about traceability and privacy. And for fintech problems, for being able to send, like you mentioned, $10 across the world in an easy fashion, well, privacy also comes of something that companies must consider. So from the perspective of blockchain technologies, from the perspective of privacy, where is MOOV on this sort of road plan?
Yeah, so on a, I guess, personal level, right, I had Antminers in my college dorm room in order to mine Bitcoin, and a lot of the community aspects of MOOV came from my involvement as a software developer contributing into Ethereum. And that to me was like this fascinating moment of, wait, we have 100,000 of the world's smartest people contributing to Ethereum, yet in the banking infrastructure space, some of the biggest companies in the world have 5 people working on their general ledger product. Quite the disconnect here, right, in horsepower and innovation that's happening. And so that's where I wanted to bring some of that open community and getting the brightest minds into traditional fiat rails, because I think one of the inhibitors that has been there is that we have these gateways that have existed to transfer fiat into crypto and crypto back to fiat. And so what we're trying to do with MOOV is you still want to be able to use your fiat currency in whatever country you're in, but why can't we extend it that last mile and not have this cryptocurrency and crypto exchange over here, and then I've got US dollars over here, and how does the average citizen interact with that? And we need to make the on-roads and off-roads simpler. I think MOOV's doing that. Most of the early adopters were companies that are crypto exchanges to our open source technologies because they got it. They were already using open source technologies for the rest of their services. And so we'll see how that goes. To me, it's a better ledger, and why not use that rather than a proprietary ledger that's sitting on a mainframe.
Wade, this is a fascinating topic for myself as well. A lot of the clients that come to us, they are thinking about blockchain. They're often raising capital and figuring out if they can leverage sort of two powerful forces: blockchain, which is a very decentralized technology, and artificial intelligence, which is quite centralized, at least for the moment being. And what I often think about is the sort of incremental progress, right? Think about a potential future state. So imagine yourself being fully decentralized, imagine yourself using technology at its best, but now work backwards. See if you can implement incremental steps along that path, perhaps open source your sort of proprietary non-decentralized code now, see if that sort of improves your chances to get to that ultimate state. So from my perspective, sort of working backwards is one of the best ways to get to sort of the next step, is that you can now see the roadblocks that stop you from getting to that ultimate state. So I would love to hear your ultimate vision for how you go about describing a MOOV in its ability to use blockchain technology. So imagine, me and you are having a discussion. It's 5 years from now. You're extremely happy at things, at your ability to implement blockchain technologies at MOOV. And now, what does that ultimate state look like?
Yeah. So for me, we've talked about how we share data, right? And what's the governance behind sharing data? Who has access to it? And who has the ability to unmask it? That's one of the hardest parts inside of financial services. And the entitlements, rights, and permissions is ultimately what we're building because of the sensitive nature of what's behind that. I think where we're at right now, utilizing things like Kafka for real-time event streaming as our integration point, that's great for like contractual permission-based access to the data. But now as we want to share data more broadly, and you're running an instance of MOOV in AWS, and the next company is running it inside of Azure, and the next company's running it someplace else. How are we sharing that we have KYC'd this customer, they've validated their bank account, and they have transaction history? And so let's not worry about it. Send them a payment. You don't need to manually review this. This may be the first time you've seen that entity, but it's not the first time the MOOV users have seen that entity, and doing that in a way that we're safe to share that information. So we see it as that abstraction layer from the local instance. What data do I want to share with others in order to make my consumer's user experience better?
Wade, I would love to chat with you about probabilities. Probabilities are one of the key sort of strategies that we use at Produvia. We think about sort of this potential probability space, in that we don't know everything for certain, but we are making the best possible guesses to get to the end results. And fintech oftentimes, especially when you're not dealing with a full picture, especially if you don't have sort of the data from starting at day zero, you are introducing uncertainty, you're dealing with probabilities. And I'm curious to know how sort of you view probabilities, and how you view MOOV is sort of helping your clients to reduce the risk by managing probabilities for your clients.
Yes. So to me, this is in line with your risk question before, right? What is the risk of trying this new technology, which is constantly, if I just buy this from, name the big public company, it may not be the best solution, but at least they're going to be around for a while. And for sure they'll be around because I'm paying them so much money anyways. How do I mitigate that risk and do something with you? And I think the concept that I'm going to forklift out my core system at JP Morgan Chase and drop in MOOV, this new open source technology, is no chance ever. Right. And that actually is less risky for them than it would be for the local community bank to give this a go. So what we're seeing is companies or financial institutions that are leveraging technologies like MuleSoft, are leveraging technologies such as Kafka and the Confluent team that are doing core modernization, where they can start to peel off some of these payment services that are currently being run through mainframe technologies or proprietary black boxes. Those are the customers that are able to bring MOOV in, start sending transactions our way rather than the traditional way, because they've done that ability to kind of peel back the onion and place us in for part of the pieces. And again, MOOV does a couple things well. We're just getting started. And so I always joke that, we don't have a GL entry that goes out to, line 4 in the drive up line for cash going up to the person outside of the branch. But we do some other things super well at web scale. And so to us, it's those companies that are not looking for, I'm mad at my vendor and I want to rip everything out and try something new, but I'm already implementing strategies in order to de-risk myself, remove my dependencies on certain vendors, and be able to try something new. And MOOV may not be the right solution for them, but that's the right strategy to decouple some of these black boxes that they're so dependent on today.
Wade, I would love to discuss how you are using APIs or application interface, or application programming interfaces for short, for creating your services, how you're helping your clients to use your APIs to solve their problems. APIs is a great way for you and your clients to derive sort of value exchange from each other. You're providing a service. That service is automated through the API, and I'm curious to know, how you are currently leveraging and how do you want to leverage APIs in the future?
Absolutely. So, and this is the difference between really our open source projects and our paid projects, is the level of documentation, the level of entitlements, rights, and permissions on top of our APIs, and then our entire eventing backend stream. So we do 3 levels of APIs. So you can do every single REST API for our system, all CRUD commands you can configure and generate an API key. There is nothing that can be done that can't be done via RESTful API inside of our system. And so we expose those both to the internet, and then we have admin-facing APIs as well. And so there's certain state changes, like this is a new payee. Well, that creates a new state for a payee on the admin side that needs to be approved. So we've exposed both on the bank-facing side and the internet-facing side APIs in order to allow people to do that. And then what we've decided is we can't build everything. And that's why we've chosen to expose webhooks on Kafka Streams for all third-party integrations. And so if you want to integrate a different KYC provider that does some, magical ML stuff that they've spent millions on, why not? Just add that into that webhook and allow that to be processed. Same thing with fraud solutions, identity solutions. We're not trying to, build everything. We're trying to allow our customers to pick the best of breed solutions they want, allow that to be integrated into those APIs. And then, as they scale, maybe they need a different vendor for some of those solutions.
Wade, how do you go about deciding, what are the next priorities, right? COVID-19 has shifted everyone's priorities this year, and I would love to learn, how do you see your priorities for 2021?
Yeah, so we joke, we're trying to be the most boring company in fintech. And what we mean by that is we just go where the money goes. So ACH is $55 trillion. We've added Wire, we've added Image Cash Letter. We're working really hard on RTP via the clearinghouse. And so, all of these things, any developer could really go buy the 500-page PDF and re-implement. And so we are trying to focus just on those building blocks and add additional payment modalities and ledgering services. And it's really being driven by what our customers are asking for. And I think the difference is just doing those things at web scale. A lot of software developers take for advantage that they can add, 20 nodes in order to do PPP processing on any cloud provider. It's really hard to add 20 nodes of compute to your AS400. And so some of these things just intrinsically, because we've done it in the cloud and in an asynchronous decoupled way, play well for high scale, high usage consumers.
Wade, one of the trending technologies that I see more and more companies now leveraging is the idea of leveraging serverless architectures. Now, serverless architectures you're well familiar with, in that they aim to create a less sort of managed scenario for you, the development team, and allow the cloud vendors to take on more responsibilities. So my question to you is, are you leveraging serverless architectures at MOOV? And if you are, then I'm curious to know how.
Yeah, so we leverage Knative on top of Kubernetes. And then we also, all of our eventing system utilizes the cloud event standard that's been described by the Cloud Native Foundation, which is part of the Linux Foundation. And what we've chosen to do is not take on those bets, right? We have in-process partnerships with GCP, Azure, and AWS to really leverage. If you're a big AWS customer, we want to have our data in Aurora. We want to have it in their message queuing system and their data lakes. And as you pick different cloud vendors, you want to take advantage of those pieces. What we found, sadly, because of financial services, is state really matters. And so a lot of the pieces that we're doing for lookups that require speed, we still utilize containers, inside of pods, whether that's OpenStack or Kubernetes, and because we have to manage that state, right? When you're building a wire, when you're building an ACH file, you have to have state behind that system. And so we aren't, probably not to the perfect, spot in financial technology where we can totally embrace Knative services and serverless functionality because of that state management need. But who knows? Hopefully we can adopt it sooner. Ultimately, those pieces are decreasing management, and I think doing Kubernetes well, utilizing technologies like Terraform in order to keep everything running well, give you maybe not all the cost advantages, but give you the maintenance advantages that serverless provides.
Wade, you have a very unique perspective. You come from a development background. You have an engineering mind. I'm curious to know what your other team members are helping you with if you are focusing on sort of the leadership side. What are some of the other elements that you are sort of supported by your team members?
Yeah, so I'm a CEO day in, day out. My hobby is I've got a 5-node Kubernetes cluster running on Raspberry Pis on my desk, and that's fortunately I bought a new laptop a month and a half ago, and I realized I didn't have VS Code installed on it until this week. So my world is very much CEO, very much interfacing with customers. My team runs circles around me on the technical side of things. I love it. Like, that's my hobby. I had an ISDN line into my BBS system running on a Sun Solaris box in 5th grade into my parents' house. So that's to me just the fun part of my career. Obviously, I spend more time talking with bankers about non-interest income and cheap deposits than I do about Knative functions on top of Kubernetes.
Absolutely. Being able to shift your language depending on who you talk to is critical. But at the same time, I really appreciate that you have been driving this sort of open source initiative at MOOV, because it opens up so much potential for anyone to improve upon what you're doing without sort of holding yourself back. You're accelerating your development speed. You're moving faster by catching bugs, and ultimately that's improving your ability to offer better software, because you're now being seen as more trustworthy to your providers and to your clients. It's great to see that. At the same time, I would love to learn more about, how do you plan to use the next capital? You've mentioned you have raised capital. You've mentioned that this capital is a way for others to signify that you are sticking around, that you are creating something that will last a long time. Imagine you are in a position where you're able to scale, you're able to grow. So what is that capital now being used for?
Yeah, so first and foremost, it really was for resiliency. So you go into a financial institution or a publicly traded fintech and say you have a better payment processing engine, and they say, great, is this a side project of yours, Wade? This, like, it's you versus XYZ publicly traded company. So for sure, resiliency is mission critical. The other piece is, as we started working with customers and fixing things like, I have a wire problem, because it turns out this COVID thing has kept people out of the branches, and the only way to do a wire is coming into my branch, which, the number 4 bank in America, US Bank, you can't originate a wire online. Imagine the rest of the financial institutions and where they're at with wire. So we started doing those type of conversations, integrations. And what we found was people said, you know what, Wade, I don't really have a wire problem. I really have a same-day payment and same-day settlement problem. And I hate wires. And they're very manual. Like, if you could bring me RTP, fix my wire problem today, and then bring me RTP and let me cannibalize that contract, so I don't have a wire contract and I don't have an RTP contract. I have a same-day payment contract, and can you help me with that? And that's really where we said, hey, if we had some more capital, we could go faster and do some of these things in parallel, and not have to build out this big wire and ACH business before we can go build the next pieces out. And so being able to be around. We can grow our company to, over $1 million in monthly burn rate, and we're still going to be around for 36 months, and be able to go faster and really provide that more complete solution than them picking individual vendors for each one of those payment modalities.
Wade, we have a couple minutes left on this live stream. I'll ask you one more question, and then I will also mention a comment that I noticed on one of the channels. So Rael on YouTube says, thanks, Wade and Slava. I'm learning so much, very useful information. Thanks, Rael. The question that I have for you, Wade, is if you are learning to use data, if you're learning to apply data to solve fintech problems, then how do you see yourself in sort of your impact on this world, right? We're all ultimately aiming to create some impact on this world, and through your initiative, you are already creating an impact, especially through your open source infrastructure. I'm curious to know, like, what is sort of that dent in the universe goal that you have?
The dent in the universe I want to do is, I think it should cost 10 cents a month for a DDA account. And if we are able to pull that off with open source technologies on top of cloud providers, there's never going to be a unbanked, which really means unprofitable to bank, set of consumers out there. And you really think about, there's all kinds of numbers, 42 to 50 million US citizens that don't have a bank account. Like, we're the wealthiest nation ever. And 50 million people we can't bank, that do 7 transactions a month, but we can give them Instagram for free. That to me is horribly frustrating. And so if MOOV does its job, I think we eradicate unbanked in the United States. Maybe, our more ambitious idea is do that worldwide. To me, that would be quite the legacy to leave behind.
I really appreciate your time, Wade. It's been great chatting with you. I have learned quite a bit about the fintech industry from our conversation. And I remind everyone who is joining this live stream that Myself and my team, we interview executives and founders like Wade every single week, where we discuss how you go about using the latest technologies to solve real business problems. So if you're interested to be educated, if you're interested to be inspired by how you go about using technology, please join us next week. For those who are interested, Wade, what's the best way for our audience to reach you or contact you?
So I'm Wade Arnold on Twitter. Slack.moov.io has over 1,400 fintech builders and operators. It's an open community where people are sharing their knowledge all together. So check out those two things, Wade Arnold on Twitter and slack.moov.io.
Perfect. What I'll do now is I'll share a brief comment for those who are interested. Wade on Twitter. And this is a link that anyone can go to and they can check out his Twitter account. This is a good starting point. Again, MOOV has a website, moov.io. I'll put that also in the comments there. So please check out MOOV. Please check out Wade's account on Twitter. And I am super thankful that you joined me today, Wade.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Great. I am just going to wrap up this show here. For those who are interested to have a conversation with me about how you leverage technology, I am more than happy to discuss with you how you can do that. Myself and my team are available to have that discussion. If you're interested, feel free to schedule a brief discovery call with me at produvia.com/start. This is a way for you to chat with me and learn how you can use technology to solve real business problems. For the last 7 years, my team and I have developed AI technology, meaning artificial intelligence technologies that have helped companies around the world. So if you are interested, if you have data, if you want to solve real problems like Wade has been focusing on with his team, I encourage you to reach out and schedule a brief call with me. And I remind for those who are listening that we will have another interview next week, perhaps if not next week, next year, and we will continue this amazing journey to share insights and educate those around us. I want to thank everyone for their time, and I am super thankful that you joined me on Friday afternoon. Thanks very much.